"You dropped this, sir," said the janitor's daughter. The CEO froze when he saw his late wife's locket in her hand. The office floor was nearly deserted by the time Ethan Ward stepped out of his corner suite. Fluorescent lights flickered faintly above the polished tiles, humming in the silence. It was past 8, and most of the staff had long since gone home. But Ethan had stayed late, as he often did, reviewing reports, managing emails, trying to stay distracted. His polished shoes echoed down the hallway. In his hand he held something small, soft, and frayed around the edges. A pale silver fabric bracelet. It looked worn, hand-stitched, with faint threading where initials had once been sewn. He stopped near the elevator and stared at it in the harsh light. Natalie had made 2 of them. Hers had a blue thread woven through it, his, just plain silver. She had called them our lucky bands the night before she went into labor. Ethan's jaw tightened. He slipped the bracelet into his coat pocket and reached to press the elevator button. As he moved, the bracelet slipped silently from his pocket, landing near the base of the wall. Down the hallway, a soft patter of tiny footsteps echoed. A small girl, no more than 3 years old, came trotting around the corner. She wore a pink cotton dress and had her blonde hair tied up in a messy little bun. Her eyes lit up as she spotted something on the floor. She bent down and picked it up with careful fingers. "You dropped this, sir," she chirped, skipping toward Ethan with the bracelet held high in her mittened hand. Ethan blinked, startled. "Oh, thank you." As he bent slightly to take it from her, the girl beamed and tugged up her sleeve with the other hand. "Look, I have one too." Ethan froze. Wrapped around her small wrist was a bracelet, made of the exact same fabric, the same stitching style, the same delicate phrase at the edge. It wasn't just similar, it was identical to Natalie's. His heart stalled. "Where did you get that?" he asked, more sharply than he meant to. The little girl didn't flinch. She smiled proudly. "My mommy made it for me." His throat closed. "Mommy?" He crouched down to her level, his voice barely steady. "Your mother? What's your mother's name?" The girl answered brightly. "Avery Blake. She's cleaning over there." She pointed down the hall. Ethan turned, slowly. At the far end of the corridor, near the janitor's closet, a woman stood frozen. She wore a plain gray uniform and held a mop in one hand. Her blonde hair was tied up high, strands slipping loose around her face. Her posture was rigid, like someone who had just heard a voice from a dream or a nightmare. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. For a moment, everything around them, the humming lights, the soft whir of the HVAC, even the child's small movements, seemed to blur. Their eyes met across the hallway. She did not speak, neither did he. But in that fraction of a second, recognition cracked through the years of silence and loss like a lightning bolt across a winter sky. His lips parted. "Nah." But the word never made it out. She took a step back, just barely. Her grip on the mop tightened. The little girl tugged lightly on Ethan's sleeve again, unaware of the tension that had thickened around them. "She's really good at making bracelets," she added sweetly. "We have matching ones." Still, neither adult moved. The harsh, sterile lights above flickered once more. And there they were, 3 figures locked in a frozen tableau. A man who had once buried the love of his life. A woman who had vanished into another name. And a child with a pink dress and a familiar thread of fabric tied to her wrist. The hallway was silent, but everything had changed. For a long moment after she disappeared down the hallway, Ethan couldn't move. His hand hung loosely at his side, the bracelet still caught between his fingers. Then came the sound of quick footsteps. The little girl's pink dress fluttered as her mother pulled her along, her tiny hand gripping Avery's. "Wait, Miss Blake," he called. But Avery didn't turn. His voice echoed down the corridor, hollow and unanswered. Just before turning the corner, she looked back for the briefest instant. Their eyes met, sharp, aching, and fleeting. That single glance sliced through him deeper than any blade. Then she was gone. Ethan stood there long after the sound of their footsteps faded. Something inside him shifted, cracked open. That face, that voice, the way she had looked at him, it couldn't be a coincidence. It was her, It had to be. And yet, Natalie was dead. He had buried her 3 years ago, or so he'd been told. He'd stood over an empty casket because the hospital never released her body. His mother had handed him the death certificate herself. He'd believed it because there was nothing else he could do. He drew a long breath, rubbing a hand over his face. "You're imagining things," he muttered. "You're tired. That woman isn't Natalie." But his heart wouldn't listen. That night, he didn't eat, didn't sleep. He sat in the dim light of his apartment, a quiet so deep it hummed in his ears. On the desk beside him sat a small wooden box, its corners worn smooth by years of handling. He opened it carefully. Inside lay a photograph from their wedding day, a folded hospital bracelet, 2 frayed fabric wristbands, one silver, one blue, and a letter that stopped mid-sentence after 3 lines. He ran his thumb along the silver threads of his bracelet, remembering the day she made them. "Now we'll always have something that can't be taken away," she'd said, laughing softly. He stared at the photo, the golden light in her hair. The woman in the hallway had looked just like that, same color, same softness, same quiet strength. "It's impossible," he whispered. "She's gone." But the thought refused to leave him. Across town, in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, Avery sat beside her sleeping daughter. The yellow light from a bedside lamp fell across her tired face. Lily's small hand rested on her stuffed bunny, her breathing steady and innocent. Avery brushed a strand of hair from the child's forehead, then gently slipped the bracelet from her wrist. She closed her own hand around it, pressing it to her chest. Tears came, not of weakness, but of fury. "Why now, Ethan?" she whispered. "Why after all this time?" The memory clawed its way back, the white hospital walls, the sting of antiseptic, the suffocating pain. She had called for him, but he never came. Instead, his mother did. Elegant, cold, her voice sharper than the scalpel that had cut her open. "Take this money and disappear," she'd said. "You will not ruin my son's life." That was the moment Natalie Blake had died, and Avery Blake had been born, a woman who no longer hoped for rescue, who had learned to build a life from what little was left. She wiped her eyes and looked at Lily. "You have me," she murmured. "That's all we need." But she knew Ethan had seen the bracelet, and she knew he would not forget it. The next night, she didn't show up for her cleaning shift. She asked to move to the morning crew, praying it would be enough to keep him away. At the office, Ethan waited until midnight, pacing the same stretch of hallway. The hum of the lights, the echo of his own shoes, it all felt heavier than before. When the clock struck 12, he went downstairs to the security office. "Can you show me the staff roster for the cleaning crew?" he asked. The guard flipped through a file. "Here, sir. The one you asked about, A. Blake, temporary hire, no photo, no permanent record." Ethan's pulse quickened, his eyes fixed on the page. A. Blake. Blake. The same last name, the same bracelet. He leaned against the wall, paper trembling in his hand. Lily's voice echoed in his head. "Mommy made it for me." He closed his eyes. The words rang again and again, pulling him toward the truth he had been too afraid to believe. He returned to his office, the building dark and still. On his desk, the bracelet lay where he had left it, glinting faintly under the lamp. He picked it up, the fabric soft but unyielding in his palm. "Natalie," he whispered, "if that's you, please, just give me one chance to make this right." The bracelet slipped from his fingers, landing softly beside a single tear that fell before he could stop it. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Ward allowed himself to hope for something impossible, yet suddenly so close he could almost reach it. Ethan arrived at the office before dawn. He had not slept, not even for a second. The images from the past 2 nights swirled in his mind. The child, the woman, the bracelet. He turned on his laptop and typed quickly. Subject: temporary janitorial staff, Avery Blake. Request: full personnel record, background verification, emergency contact info, and employment history. The response came swiftly, but it gave him nothing. A. Blake. Contract cleaner from third-party service. Status: temporary. No photo. No internal file. No medical records. Only a vendor-linked ID number. No face, no trace, just a name. Ethan leaned back in his chair, frustrated. They didn't want her to be found, he muttered. He needed more. He pulled a worn photo from his wallet, his wedding day, Natalie, glowing, laughing at something he had whispered. He studied the way she tilted her head toward the camera, eyes full of love. He hadn't looked at it in months. Slipping the photo into an envelope, he walked out of the building and crossed the street to a print shop. He had passed it dozens of times. Today, he walked in. The bell above the door jingled. "Morning," said the woman behind the counter. "Good morning. I need this photo scanned and cleaned up, please." "Sure thing," she replied, taking the envelope from him. While she worked, Ethan wandered aimlessly through the small shop. That's when something stopped him cold. On the wall, beneath a sign that read, "Customers Kids Art Gallery," was a child's drawing in bright crayon. 3 stick figures stood in front of a red house, one tall, one medium, and one small with curly hair, written above in crooked handwriting. "Me, Mommy, and our house." Signed, Lily Blake. His heart kicked against his ribs. Blake. Lily. He turned to the woman at the counter. "This drawing, was it done by Lily Blake?" She smiled warmly. "Yes, sweetest little girl. Her mom's Avery. They live right upstairs. Room 203. He tried to stay calm. "Are they home right now?" The woman glanced at the wall clock. "Probably. Avery works nights, so mornings she's usually here with Lily." Ethan nodded a tense thank you, then stepped out of the shop. Beside the laundromat entrance, a narrow staircase led up. Each creaky step echoed louder than the last. Outside room 203, he paused. From inside he heard humming. Soft, gentle. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." He nearly stumbled backward. Natalie used to sing that. While folding baby clothes, while lying beside him in bed, it had been their lullaby. His chest tightened. He knocked once. No answer. Again, louder. This time, the door opened just a crack. A sleepy face peeked through. A small girl with tangled curls. "Hi," she said, rubbing her eyes. Ethan crouched. "Hi. Is your mom home?" She blinked at him, then turned and shouted, "Mommy, it's the man with the bracelet." Footsteps from inside. Then, she appeared, Avery, her back turned, drying her hands on a towel, her blonde hair tied up. She moved slowly toward the doorway. When she turned around, their eyes met. Ethan's breath caught. She looked exactly the same, and yet not. Older, tired, but undeniably her. He opened his mouth. "Avery." She shook her head, firm. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered. And then, she gently closed the door. The soft click of the latch echoed louder than any scream. Ethan stood motionless, staring at the number, 203. In his hand, the photo of Natalie crumpled slightly. It was her. He no longer had doubts. But she wasn't just Natalie anymore. She was Avery. And she was guarding something far more painful than he had ever imagined. Ethan waited outside room 203 for hours. The winter light faded from gray to gold to deep blue. And still, he stayed. He had no plan, no rehearsed words, only a small piece of fabric stitched back together with trembling fingers. When evening came, he knocked. Once, then again. "Avery," he called softly. "Please, open the door." No response. He closed his eyes, breathed in, and spoke the name he hadn't dared say in 3 years. "Natalie?" There was a pause. Then the faint click of a lock. The door opened a few inches, revealing her face in the dim light. Her hair was loosely tied. Her eyes, rimmed red with exhaustion, flicked down to the bracelet in his hand. He didn't speak, just held it out. Not accusing, only asking. Her fingers gripped the doorframe. Then, wordlessly, she stepped aside to let him in. Lily lay asleep on a small bed in the corner, clutching her stuffed bunny. The room was modest but clean, filled with quiet tenderness, clearly cared for. Ethan sat in the lone chair near the window. The bracelet rested on the table between them. "I'm not here to fight," he said. I need to know why." Avery crossed her arms and stared at the floor. After a long silence, he whispered again, "Natalie, is it really you?" Her head snapped up. Her voice cut like glass. "Do not call me that." He froze. "My name is Avery Blake," she said firmly. "I have a life now. A job, a daughter. That's all I want." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice cracking. "I mourned you for 3 years. I buried a coffin with your name on it. I thought I lost you, and our baby. And now I see you here, alive, and I can't just walk away." Avery's breath trembled, and then her anger broke through. "You think you were the only one who suffered?" she whispered. "I gave birth alone, Ethan, alone. I thought I was dying." She looked away, voice rising. "When I woke up, your mother was there, not you." Ethan blinked, confusion shifting into dread. She dropped cash on the bed and said, "Disappear. Don't ruin his future." She said, "You agreed. That you didn't want me. That you didn't want the baby." Ethan's face went pale. "No, I didn't know." "She said you signed papers," Avery said, her tears flowing now. "Said it was what you wanted." He shook his head. "I swear to you, Natalie, I didn't know. I never saw anything. I was overseas when they said you, and the baby, didn't make it." Avery laughed bitterly through her tears. "You believed them. You didn't even question it." I was broken," he whispered. "I didn't know what to believe, but I never would have." "It doesn't matter now," she said, softer, but still wounded. "By the time I realized I couldn't trust anyone, it was too late. I had no money, no family, just her." She turned to look at Lily and gently brushed her hair aside. "She's safe now. She's happy. She doesn't need your world, or your ghosts." Ethan stood slowly. "She's my daughter." Avery's shoulders shook. "I know. But please, Ethan." She looked at him. Her eyes held years of pain, love, and fear. "Please don't tear this life apart. Don't let her see me fall apart again." He stood, frozen by the weight of her plea. Her next words were a whisper. "I had to bury Natalie Ward so Avery Blake could keep our child alive." The truth hit him like a wave. He stepped forward, but she shook her head. "Go," she said. "You know enough now. Do not come back." He hesitated. She turned away, lifted Lily into her arms, and pressed her face into her daughter's soft hair, protecting, shielding. Ethan remained a moment longer, then turned to leave. The hallway light spilled across the small bed, catching the shimmer of fabric bracelets. One on Lily's wrist, one in Ethan's hand. The same thread that had once tied them together. Now, it was all that remained. 3 days passed. Ethan did not return to room 203. Instead, one quiet morning before the sun had risen, he slipped a handwritten note beneath Avery's door. The paper was plain, the handwriting careful but hesitant. "I'm sorry. I will not disturb you again. But if there's ever a chance, I'll be here, waiting." He signed only with his initial, E. Avery found it after taking Lily to daycare. She stood in the hallway with the note in her hand for a long time, reading and rereading the words. She did not cry. She did not smile. She folded it once, gently, and tucked it into her drawer. She did not throw it away. Ethan kept his word. He did not show up at her door again. He did not call, did not ask questions, did not push. But his presence lingered, in the small, quiet ways that spoke more loudly than words ever could. One rainy afternoon, the office halls echoed with the sound of thunder. Avery was on the 3rd floor, finishing her shift, when her phone buzzed twice. She saw the missed call from the daycare center and panic struck. She rushed down the stairs only to find Lily curled up near the security desk, her cheeks flushed with fever, rain dripping from her bangs. A young guard had found her outside and brought her in, unsure what to do next. Before Avery could step forward, A familiar voice cut through the tension. "I've got her, Ethan." Drenched from the storm, his tie askew, eyes sharp with worry, he picked Lily up in his arms and carried her into his office, where it was warm and quiet. Avery stood frozen for a moment before slowly following. She watched from the doorway, silent. Ethan placed Lily gently on the couch, then knelt beside her. He checked her temperature with the back of his hand, then opened a drawer, pulled out a clean towel, and warmed it under running water in the kitchenette. He poured milk into a mug and microwaved it. His movements were calm, practiced. When he sat back beside Lily, he whispered softly, brushing her hair from her forehead. Avery leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her throat ached with unspoken emotion. She didn't say anything, neither did he. Their eyes met only once, and he gave the faintest nod, asking for nothing, offering only care. Later that evening, when Lily's fever had gone down and she was sleeping on the couch wrapped in Ethan's coat, Avery carried her home without a word. She wanted to thank him, but her voice refused to come. From that day on, Ethan never set foot near her apartment. But she began to notice the quiet changes. An envelope arrived with her next paycheck. Her employment status had been upgraded to include health insurance coverage. She hadn't applied for it. No one mentioned it. But she knew. Weeks later, Lily came down with another fever. Avery took her to the clinic, prepared to negotiate the cost. But the receptionist smiled and said, "You're fully covered. It's already taken care of." Avery clutched the receipt in her hand as they left. It had no name attached, only the company logo in the corner. She didn't need to ask. She never mentioned it. Then one late evening, when the building was empty, she finished her cleaning round and found herself standing outside Ethan's office door. She hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the glass pane. Then she pulled a small sticky note from her pocket and wrote, "Thank you for letting me choose." She placed it on the glass, just over the handle, where he would see it first thing in the morning. When Ethan returned the next day, he paused outside the door. His eyes found the note immediately. He read it once, then again, his fingers trembling slightly as he peeled it off and folded it carefully. He slid it into the pocket of his wallet, next to the repaired bracelet he still carried with him every day. It was not a promise. It was not forgiveness. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. The air in Margaret Ward's estate was still and cold, the kind of silence that did not invite conversation. Ethan stepped through the towering front doors and into the grand living room, where everything remained untouched, immaculate, sterile, and carefully curated. On the mantel above the fireplace sat the family photo. Ethan as a boy, his father before he passed, and Margaret, regal in pearls. Next to it was the wedding photo from 3 years ago, but it was cropped. Natalie's face was missing, as if she had never been there. Ethan picked it up slowly, then looked toward the hallway where his mother now stood. "Why did you do it?" he asked, voice calm but tight. "I want the truth, Mother. Why did you lie to me?" Margaret raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "Because I love you, Ethan. I protected you from a mistake. That girl, Natalie, she was nothing. An orphan, no name, no future. I warned you she would drag you down." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. He stepped forward, pulling out 2 documents from his coat pocket and laying them on the coffee table. One was Lily's birth certificate. The other was a copy of the hospital's record, proof of Avery Blake's identity and her real name. "She gave birth alone, and you told her to disappear." His voice cracked with restrained fury. "You looked her in the eye, while she was still bleeding, and told her she wasn't welcome, that her child, your grandchild, was a stain." Margaret scoffed, her posture tightening. "You think you're a father now?" She left Ethan. Not a word, no phone call, no letter. "I thought you understood." She chose to vanish. "No." Ethan's tone sharpened. "You made sure I believed she died. You handed me a death certificate and said the baby didn't make it. You knew I was overseas. You made sure I couldn't ask questions." Margaret stepped forward, chin lifted. "I did what I had to do. You were on the verge of losing everything, your company, your mind. That girl was the reason. She was my wife." Ethan's voice trembled with rage. "And Lily is my daughter, a living, breathing child you refuse to even look at." He looked down for a moment, struggling to catch his breath. Then he straightened, something final hardening in his gaze. "I lost 3 years of her life. I wasn't there when she took her first steps, when she said her first word. I missed everything. Because of you." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "So what now? You'll throw away your name, your legacy, for her?" "I'm not throwing anything away," Ethan said evenly. "I'm reclaiming what should have never been taken from me. I'm choosing to be a father." He took the photo frame from the mantel and placed it face down. "I don't need your blessing, but I won't lie to myself anymore." Margaret stood still, lips pressed tightly together, but she said nothing. Ethan turned to leave. He paused at the doorway just long enough to look back once, not at his mother, but at the house itself. The chandeliers, the polished floors, the cold marble, everything that once defined who he was. And none of it mattered anymore. He stepped through the door and pulled it shut behind him. The echo of it closing was soft, but it sounded like an ending. And a beginning. Snow drifted gently over the office building, now glowing with warm golden lights strung across windows and doorways. Inside, soft music played, laughter echoed, and the scent of cinnamon and hot cocoa wrapped around everyone like a comforting blanket. The company's family and hope Christmas gathering was in full swing. Ethan stood by the tree in the main lounge, dressed simply in a dark sweater and slacks, scanning the crowd of employees and their families. A spark of hope burned in his chest, but he kept it quiet, cautious. Then the door opened. Avery stepped in, holding Lily's hand. She was not in her cleaning uniform tonight. Instead, she wore a soft white dress that fell just below her knees, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, catching the glow of the Christmas lights. She looked hesitant, her eyes darting across the room, but composed. Ethan didn't move. He held his breath. Lily saw him first. The little girl broke free and ran straight across the room, arms open. "Daddy!" The word was clear, bright, and so innocent it pierced through every conversation in the room. A few people turned to look. Some froze in surprise, but Ethan didn't notice any of it. He dropped to his knees just in time to catch her. "Daddy," Lily repeated, beaming. "Look at my dress." He held her tight, eyes squeezed shut. When he finally pulled back, his face was wet. He laughed softly through the tears, brushing hair out of her eyes. "You're beautiful." Avery had walked halfway into the room and stopped. Her body tensed when Lily ran to Ethan, her first instinct to pull her back, to protect her. But then she saw Ethan, how gently he held their daughter, how real the moment was, and something in her softened. She let her hands fall to her sides. Later in the evening, after presents were exchanged and carols were sung, Ethan asked Avery to stay behind for just a moment. The room had mostly cleared, and the soft light from the tree cast everything in a gentle gold. He handed her a small box, wrapped in silver paper with a single red ribbon. Inside were 2 handmade fabric bracelets, the same shade of soft silver. She gasped. "These are," she started. Ethan nodded. "I remade them, from what was left of the one you gave me." He took a slow breath. "I know you are Avery now. You earned the right to become whoever you needed to be to survive. But whether you go by Avery or Natalie, you've always been the only one for me." Avery looked down at the bracelets, running her fingers over the fabric. The stitches were imperfect, clearly done by hand, but that only made them more precious. She looked up at him, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. And without a word, she reached out and took his hand. They stood like that for a long moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of Christmas lights and the faint sound of Lily singing to herself across the room. There was no grand speech, no dramatic kiss, just 2 people, broken and mended, finding the strength to hold each other again after all they had lost. Natalie, because tonight, that is who she chose to be, gently squeezed his hand. It was not a promise, but it was enough. The first morning of the new year brought quiet sunlight through Ethan's office windows. A soft frost glazed the trees outside, catching the light like crystal. He sat at his desk, pen in hand, reviewing paperwork for the company's annual updates. At the bottom of the last form, he paused. Dependents, it read. Without hesitation, he wrote, Daughter, Lily Ward. He stared at the name for a moment, then signed. A knock sounded on his door. It was not his assistant. It was her, not Avery Blake. Natalie Ward. She stepped in with poise, not the quiet hesitance of someone entering a space she did not belong in, but the calm certainty of someone reclaiming what had always been hers. She wore a navy blue coat over a soft gray dress, her blonde hair neatly pulled back. Around her wrist was the fabric bracelet Ethan had remade. Good morning, she said simply. He stood, unsure whether to step closer. You came. I was invited, she replied, then held up a lanyard. Her name was printed clearly on the badge, Natalie Ward, Guest of Honor, Family Support Program. Ethan's eyes lingered on it. She noticed, and smiled just a little. I am tired of hiding, she said, of rewriting myself just to be allowed to exist. He nodded slowly, emotion welling up. I never wanted you to have to disappear. I know that now, she said. Natalie looked around the office, now filled with small signs of change, photos of employees' families, a colorful drawing of Lily on the wall, mugs with cheerful slogans gifted by staff. This was not just a CEO's office anymore. It was a father's. Moments later, Lily peeked in from behind the door, holding a tray wrapped in foil. She beamed. We brought cookies. Ethan crouched to her level, laughing softly. Is that so? Let me guess. Chocolate chip? With sprinkles, Lily shouted proudly. Natalie chuckled. Her idea of a balanced breakfast. The three of them sat for a few minutes, sharing cookies, no longer needing to fill silence with explanations. There was peace in the quiet, a sense of rightness. Eventually, Natalie stood and took Ethan's hand. Can I show you something? They drove together to the edge of town, where a modest but cozy house stood beneath a row of tall pines. Natalie walked them to the porch, where a wooden plaque hung by the door. Freshly carved into it were the words, The Wards, built by love, forged by forgiveness. Ethan looked at it, then at her. Are you sure? He asked. Natalie smiled. I am. Inside, Lily ran ahead, her laughter filling the rooms like sunlight, echoing through the halls of a home that finally felt whole. Ethan turned back to Natalie, who was watching their daughter with the kind of love that could heal anything. He slipped his hand into hers. I never stopped loving you, he said. She squeezed his fingers. Then let's start again, with our name. Outside, the wind danced gently through the trees. And inside, a family, finally complete, stepped forward into a future they never thought they would get to have. And that was the story of You Drop This, Sir, said the janitor's daughter. The CEO froze when he saw his late wife's locket in her hand. A story of mistaken loss, unspoken love, and a second chance that knocked, softly but unmistakably, on the heart's door. If this story moved you, made you pause, smile, or maybe even tear up, don't forget to tap the hype button and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. We're here to remind you that even in life's quietest corners, healing is possible, and love, the real kind, always finds its way back. Thank you for watching. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and we'll see you in the next story.